The late afternoon light of Christmas Eve painted soft, snowy streaks across Boston's Newbury Street, transforming the city into a postcard of winter perfection. Inside Evergreen Diner, warm amber lights reflected off vintage ornaments, while Bing Crosby's voice floated through speakers hidden among paper snowflakes. Alexander Mitchell sat motionless in his wheelchair before an untouched glass of wine, watching life happen without him. He was utterly alone on Christmas Eve, measuring life in the spaces between his father's perfunctory text messages. At 22, paralyzed from the waist down since a car accident 4 years ago, Alexander inhabited a world of luxury that felt more like a gilded cage. His talent for architectural design and eye for detail, once destined for greatness at MIT, now only decorated sketchbooks hidden in his Beacon Hill bedroom. His father, William Mitchell, was the CEO of Mitchell Technologies, a man who commanded boardrooms and influenced markets, but couldn't find 5 minutes for his only son. The accident had changed everything, not just Alexander's body, which would never again respond to his desperate wishes to stand and run, but his relationship with the only family he had left. William had retreated into his work with the fervor of a man running from his own helplessness. He provided everything money could buy, round-the-clock nurses, a mansion with every possible accommodation, the finest doctors who all said the same thing. What he couldn't provide was himself. Alexander had grown accustomed to holidays marked by bank transfers and brief messages, to celebrations with staff who were paid to care, to a life where his wheelchair wasn't just a physical reality, but a symbol of the distance between him and the rest of the world. The door chimed, letting in a gust of winter air. A man in a dark brown cowboy hat entered, followed by a small girl chattering happily, holding a brightly wrapped Christmas present. The man's weathered hands and sun-lined face spoke of open skies and honest work utterly out of place in downtown Boston. The child, no more than 6, with golden curls and her father's steady eyes, suddenly tugged at the man's flannel shirt and whispered urgently, pointing toward Alexander. The man approached gently, his posture revealing military discipline beneath his casual stance. "May we join you?" he asked, voice warm like whiskey, careful not to startle. "I'm Mason Cooper. This is my daughter Emma. Seems nobody should sit alone on Christmas Eve." Alexander's eyes widened, shifting between the man with kind eyes and the little girl practically vibrating with excitement. When was the last time someone had asked to join him rather than being paid to be there? Emma didn't wait for an answer, bouncing forward with the small gift box. "I'm Emma. This is for you. Daddy helped me pick it. We come here every year today because it's also Mommy's birthday. But she's in heaven now." The innocence of her offering, the matter-of-fact way she spoke of death and celebration in the same breath, pierced through Alexander's carefully constructed walls. Mason pulled out a chair, moving with the unhurried grace of someone who had learned that the most important moments in life couldn't be rushed. "Everyone deserves company on Christmas Eve," he said simply. And when Emma started humming Silent Night in her sweet, slightly off-key voice, Alexander closed his eyes and felt a wish form in his heart for the first time in 4 years. The wish was simple. So simple it almost hurt. He wished not to be alone anymore. If this story has already touched something in you, there's much more ahead. Subscribe to Heart Story, where every silent moment holds the possibility of connection, and every chance encounter might be the beginning of healing you never knew you needed. Over the days following Christmas, what began as a chance encounter evolved into something neither man had anticipated. Alexander and Mason met regularly at Boston Common, where the snow-covered paths and frosted trees created a winter wonderland that seemed to exist outside of time. Emma built elaborate snow angels while the two men discovered conversation that flowed with surprising ease. Mason Cooper was 30, a widower who worked with his hands as a rancher and leather craftsman. He had raised Emma alone for 5 years, ever since his wife Sarah died during childbirth. Where William Mitchell fled from pain, Mason had learned to live alongside it, teaching his daughter that sadness and joy could exist in the same heart. His workshop in Montana smelled of hay, leather, and possibilities. Each saddle he tooled became a meditation on durability In a world where nothing truly lasted, big sky country changes a man, Mason explained one afternoon as they watched Emma feed squirrels. The stars feel close enough to touch, and the silence makes you hear your own thoughts. After the Marines, I needed that space to heal. He never mentioned his service directly, but his disciplined posture and watchful eyes told the story his words didn't. Emma had inherited her mother's sparkling eyes and her father's gentle heart, a combination that made her peculiarly sensitive to the loneliness in others. Perhaps because she had grown up with the ghost of a mother she never knew, learning early that love could transcend absence, that families could be both broken and whole simultaneously. "Why don't you smile much?" she asked Alexander one day, climbing onto a bench beside his wheelchair. "Daddy says people who don't smile are just saving up all their happiness for later." "Are you saving yours up?" Her question, innocent yet profound, made Alexander laugh genuinely for the first time in months. He found himself sharing his architectural sketches with her, designs for spaces where wheelchairs could move freely, where accessibility wasn't an afterthought, but the foundation of beauty. Mason and Alexander's conversations gradually deepened, venturing beyond safe subjects into vulnerable territory. Alexander spoke of the accident with clinical detachment, at first the drunk driver who ran the red light, the sensation of flying, the strange peace before the pain. Then gradually he revealed the deeper wounds, waking up to his father's CEO mask firmly in place as he discussed his son's care as if negotiating a business deal. "He pays for everything except his time," Alexander said quietly. "Sometimes I think he can't bear to look at me because I remind him he's not actually God." Mason nodded, understanding without pitying. "Some men think strength means never showing weakness. It takes losing everything to learn that real strength is staying present even when you're terrified." When they walked through Beacon Hill, they occasionally drew stares, Mason's cowboy hat and weathered jeans standing out among the polished urbanites. Some smiles were welcoming, others tight with unspoken judgment. Mason noticed but never acknowledged the looks. His comfort in his own skin was something Alexander found himself envying, then admiring. One afternoon at Maple Creek Coffee House, while Emma was absorbed in coloring at a nearby table, Mason watched Alexander laugh at something the child had said. A moment passed between them, suspended and fragile. "Alexander," Mason said, his voice lower than usual, "I need you to know something. Emma and I were not here because we feel sorry for you. We're here because you make our days better. You make us better." Alexander's eyes filled with tears he didn't try to hide. "I don't know how to do this," he whispered. "Neither do I," Mason admitted, "but maybe we can figure it out together." Their relationship grew slowly, carefully, like a garden tended by people who understood that the most beautiful things required patience. They discovered Guinea in small moments, Emma teaching Alexander to braid leather for a bracelet, Mason adjusting restaurant chairs without being asked, so Alexander's wheelchair fit perfectly. Alexander reading stories with different voices for each character, while Mason watched with soft eyes. Through these moments, Alexander began to understand that dignity wasn't about standing tall, it was about being seen completely and loved anyway. And Mason learned that the heart could expand in ways he never expected, finding room for new love without diminishing what came before. The universe of their small, healing family might have continued to expand gently, but William Mitchell had been watching from the shadows of his corporate tower. He had hired private investigators the moment his household staff reported that Alexander was spending time with inappropriate company. The reports on his mahogany desk painted a picture that filled him with cold fury. Mason Cooper, a working-class widower with modest means, spending hours with his vulnerable heir. To William, the conclusion was obvious. This man was a predator targeting a wealthy, disabled young man. He couldn't fathom any other explanation for why someone like Mason would be interested in his son. The confrontation occurred in William's study, a room Alexander rarely entered, with its wall of monitors displaying stock tickers and its smell of expensive leather and disappointment. Richard Thornton, William's longtime business partner, had just left after reinforcing William's concerns. "Bill, the board is talking. Your son is becoming fodder for gossip. We need to handle this situation. You will cease all contact with this man immediately, William commanded, not looking up from his laptop. He's using you, Alexander. What else could he possibly want from someone like you? The cruelty of the words, the casual dismissal of his worth beyond his bank account, hit Alexander like a physical blow. Someone like me, he repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. You mean your broken son, the one you can't stand to look at because he reminds you that you're not actually gone. William finally looked up, his face a mask of controlled anger that Alexander remembered from hostile takeover meetings he'd witnessed as a child. I'm protecting you. You're naive. Alexander, you've been sheltered. You don't understand how the world works. Alexander laughed a bitter sound that seemed to surprise them both. Sheltered, I've been imprisoned. There's a difference. Mason and Emma see me. They actually see me. When did you last look at me without seeing a liability? William stood to his full height, a tactic that worked in boardrooms but only made Alexander feel smaller in his chair. Enough. If you continue seeing him, I'll take legal action. I'll claim he's taking advantage of a disabled person. I'll destroy his little ranching business. Is that what you want? Alexander felt the trap closing around him. He knew his father's threats weren't empty. He had destroyed competitors with less motivation. The thought of Mason and innocent Emma being crushed by his father's machinery was unbearable. That night, he sent Mason a text with shaking hands. I can't see you anymore. Please don't contact me. I'm sorry. The words felt like swallowing glass. Each letter a betrayal of everything real he'd found. Mason stared at the message in the dim light of their rented Boston hotel room, reading it over and over as if the words might rearrange themselves into something that made sense. The text seemed so unlike Alexander, so cold and final. Emma found him sitting in the dark hours later, still holding his phone. Daddy, why are you sad? She asked, climbing into his lap with the instinctive understanding that her father needed comfort. Alexander can't see us anymore. Sweetheart, he said, his voice rough with unshed tears. Emma was quiet for a long moment, processing this information with the deep thought children give to incomprehensible adult decisions. But he loves us, she said simply. I know he does. He smiles different when he sees us. Real smiles, not pretend ones. Mason hugged his daughter tighter, amazed at her perception and heartbroken that she was learning so young that love wasn't always enough. For 3 days, he respected Alexander's wishes. Though it felt like holding his breath underwater, his workshop felt oppressive, each piece of leather reminding him of stories he'd planned to share. Emma stopped singing around the house, her usual cheerfulness dimmed like a light with a dying battery. On the 4th day, when Emma asked if Alexander didn't want them because they weren't rich, something in Mason snapped not in anger, but in determination. He wouldn't let his daughter believe that love was conditional on bank accounts. They drove to the Mitchell mansion in Beacon Hill, a journey into a different world where gates were meant to keep people out rather than welcome them in. The security guard was polite but firm. I'm sorry, sir. You're not on the approved list. Behind him, the mansion loomed like a beautiful prison. Emma pressed her small face between the iron bars of the gate. Alexander, she called out. Alexander, we miss you. Please come back. Her voice carried on the wind, a child's pure longing that no amount of money could buy or silence. Inside the mansion, Rosa, the longtime housekeeper, heard the commotion and quietly slipped into Alexander's room. Mijo, she whispered, her eyes soft with understanding. There is a little girl calling for you at the gate. Her voice, it reminds me of my son when he was small. She hesitated, then added, sometimes the people who should love us most are the ones who don't know how, but that doesn't mean we stop looking for those who do. Alexander wheeled to the window and saw them, Mason standing with his hand on Emma's shoulder, both looking as lost as he felt. Something inside him snapped, not broke, but snapped back into place like a dislocated joint finally returning home. He thought of all the years he'd been obedient, all the times he'd chosen his father's comfort over his own happiness. And he realized that protecting Mason and Emma from his father meant nothing if it destroyed them all anyway. The evening air was bitter cold, and light snow had started to fall, but Alexander didn't care. He maneuvered his wheelchair toward the service elevator, the one the staff used, avoiding the main floors where his father might be. He made it to the kitchen's back door where Rosa stood watch, her eyes gleaming with both worry and pride. "Be brave, Alejandro," she whispered, understanding without explanation. "When my Carlos told his father he was gay, we lost half our family, but the half we kept became whole in ways we never imagined." She pressed a warm scarf into his hands before opening the door. The journey through Boston's snowy sidewalks was arduous, his wheelchair harder to push on the slick pavement, his arms aching from the effort. But Alexander persisted with a determination he hadn't felt in years. Something fundamental had shifted inside him, the realization that his life belonged to him, not to his father's expectations or fears. He pulled open the door of Evergreen Diner with trembling hands, the bell chiming his arrival. The diner was nearly empty, but there, sitting at the same table where they'd first met, were Mason and Emma, looking as lost as he felt. They had gone there after being turned away from the mansion, drawn by the same magnetic pull of memory and hope. "Alexander," Emma cried out, jumping from her chair and running to him, wrapping her small arms around his cold form without hesitation. "You came back. I knew you would. I told Daddy you loved us." Mason stood slowly, his eyes taking in Alexander's soaked state, the determination written across his face. Without a word, he removed his jacket and wrapped it around Alexander's shoulders, his hands lingering for just a moment. "You're freezing," he said softly. "What are you doing here?" Alexander looked up at him, snow and tears indistinguishable on his face. "I'm choosing," he said simply, "for the first time in 4 years. I'm choosing. I choose you. I choose Emma. I choose us. My father can threaten all he wants, but I won't live in that prison anymore." Mason knelt beside the wheelchair, bringing himself to eye level, his own eyes wet with emotion. "Alexander, are you sure your father could make things very difficult?" "Let him try," Alexander replied. "I've already lost the use of my legs. I won't lose my heart too." The door burst open with a violence that made everyone jump. William Mitchell stood there, snow-dusted and furious, having tracked Alexander through the GPS on his phone. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his carefully styled hair in disarray, but his anger blazed undiminished. "Alexander, enough of this nonsense. You're coming home now." His voice boomed through the small diner, authority radiating from every word. Frank Antonelli, the diner's Italian-American owner, stepped forward protectively. "In my place, everyone is respected, or they leave," he said firmly, surprising himself with his courage against such obvious power and wealth. But before William could respond, Emma stepped between him and Alexander. "You're mean, so," she said clearly, her small voice carrying the weight of truth. "You're his daddy, but you're mean. My daddy says family means being in there, not just paying for things. You make Alexander cry. That's not what daddies are supposed to do." William looked down at this tiny warrior child, and something in her fearless accusation pierced his armor. "You don't understand, little girl. I'm protecting my son." Emma shook her head solemnly. "No, you're not. You're protecting yourself from feeling sad. My daddy feels sad about mommy, but he doesn't run away. He stays." The truth from a child's mouth hung in the air like an indictment. William's gaze moved from Emma to Alexander, and for the first time in 4 years, he truly looked at his son. He was soaking wet in a modest diner, defended by a cowboy and a child, and he looked more alive than he had since the accident. The fire in his eyes, the determination in his posture, the protective way Mason stood beside him. This was his son, not the broken shell he'd been managing. "Dad," Alexander began, his voice steady despite the emotions churning inside him. "When I woke up in that hospital, paralyzed and terrified, do you know what I needed? Not the best doctors or the fanciest equipment. I needed my father. I needed you to hold my hand and tell me we'd figure it out together. Instead, you disappeared into your office and threw money at the problem. But I'm not a problem to be solved. I'm your son." William's shoulders sagged, the fight leaving him as suddenly as it had arrived. He walked slowly to a chair and sat down heavily, looking every one of his 60 years. "I didn't know what to do," he admitted quietly. "When your mother died, I could work harder, make more money, build a bigger company. But when you got hurt, all my money couldn't fix it. I felt useless." "You're not useless. You're afraid, Sarah," Mason said gently. "I understand that. When Sarah died, I wanted to follow her. But Emma needed me, so I learned how to be afraid and present at the same time. Your son needs you, Mr. Mitchell. Not your money or your protection, just you." William looked at this working man who had somehow understood what he, with all his education and success, had missed. Then he revealed what no one expected, the source of his fear. "My brother David was gay," he said, the words sounding foreign on his lips. "Our father disowned him. In the 80s, during the AIDS crisis, David, he took his own life. I was 16. I found him." He looked up, his eyes haunted. "I swore I'd never lose anyone like that again. I thought I could control everything, protect everyone, but I can't. Can I?" The diner fell silent, snow continuing to fall outside, creating a private world where painful truths could finally be spoken. "I've lost 4 years," William said finally. "How do I come back from that?" Alexander wheeled himself closer, reaching for his father's hand. "One day at a time, Dad, just like I learned to live with this chair. One day at a time, together." William gripped his son's hand like a drowning man finding shore. "I'm sorry. Alexander, I'm so sorry." Emma, with the perfect timing of a child who sensed the storm had passed, piped up. "Does this mean we can all be friends now? Because I really want Alexander to come see our horses in Montana." The innocent question broke the remaining tension, drawing watery laughs from all the adults. William looked at his son, then at Mason, then at the little girl who had shown more courage than he had in years. "If you'll have me," he said quietly, "I'd like to try. I'd like to learn how to be a father again." Alexander squeezed his hand. "We'd like that, Dad. We'd all like that very much." In that moment, as snow fell softly outside the windows of Evergreen Diner, Alexander realized that true healing begins not when we find perfect answers, but when we finally ask the right questions. Sometimes, the bravest thing we can do is to admit we're afraid, and the strongest choice is to let others see us exactly as we are, broken, imperfect, and worthy of love anyway. 1 year later, Evergreen Diner was transformed with white ribbons and evergreen boughs for an afternoon that blended celebration with remembrance. It was Christmas Eve again, the anniversary of their meeting, but more importantly, it was Alexander and Mason's wedding day. They had chosen to have the ceremony in the place where their lives had truly begun, where a stranger's kindness had opened a door they thought had been forever closed. The guest list was small but meaningful: Mason's fellow ranchers who had become like brothers to him, Alexander's old friends from MIT who had reconnected once he left his father's isolation, the diner staff who had witnessed their love story unfold, and William, who stood ready to accompany his son down the aisle. The aisle itself was wide enough for Alexander's wheelchair, which Emma had decorated with holly and ribbons until it looked like a winter chariot. When he smiled at Mason, waiting at the makeshift altar, he was radiant with a joy that seemed to light the room from within. William had changed dramatically over the past year. He had stepped back from day-to-day operation at Mitchell Technologies, promoting longtime employees and trusting others for the first time in decades. He attended Alexander's physical therapy sessions, learning how to help with exercises and transfers. More significantly, he had joined PLAG, finding unexpected healing in supporting other parents of LGBTQ+ children. Most importantly, he had learned to sit with his son in silence, not needing to fix or manage anything, just being present. He had also formed an unexpected friendship with Mason, finding in the younger man a wisdom that had nothing to do with stock portfolios or market strategies. They would spend evenings in Mason's workshop during visits to Montana, William learning to tool leather for the first time in his life, discovering the meditation of creating something beautiful from raw materials. When William walked beside Alexander's wheelchair, his hand resting lightly on his son's shoulder, his eyes were wet with tears he didn't try to hide. "You look so handsome, son," he whispered. "Your mother would be so proud." Alexander squeezed his hand. "She would be proud of you too, Dad, for finding your way back." The ceremony was simple, officiated by Frank Antonelli, who had witnessed their first meeting and felt invested in their love story. Emma stood beside them as the flower girl, bouncing with excitement in her red velvet dress. Mason's vows were straightforward and profound. "Alexander, you've taught me that love isn't about finding someone perfect, but about finding someone whose broken pieces fit with yours to create something whole. I promise to push your chair when you're tired, to carry you when needed, but most importantly, to always see you not your disability, but the incredible man who saved Emma and me from a life half-lived." Alexander's vows brought tears to everyone present. "Mason, you and Emma didn't just accept my limitations. You showed me they don't define my possibilities. You've given me a family, a future, and a love I thought only existed in the books I read. I promise to be the father Emma deserves, the husband you deserve, and to never let a day pass without choosing us." Over and over again. 6 months after the wedding, the legal battle finally ended. They had won the right to adopt Noah, a 3-year-old boy with a mild congenital condition that had left him in the foster system for most of his short life. The day they brought him home, William held his grandson with trembling hands while Emma explained all the important things about being part of their family. "You have to know," she said seriously to the infant, "that we're a special family. We chose each other. That's the best kind of family." Alexander had found his voice as an advocate, designing buildings and spaces that embraced accessibility as a foundation rather than an afterthought. His work was beginning to gain recognition in architectural circles, not as William Mitchell's son, but as a visionary in his own right. The journey from that lonely Christmas Eve to this moment of abundance hadn't been easy. There had been challenges with the adoption, moments of doubt, times when old patterns tried to reassert themselves. But they had learned that healing wasn't a destination, but a journey taken hand in hand, wheel by step, day by day. Alexander looked around the room at his blended family, his father cooing over Noah, Emma making silly faces to make her brother laugh, Mason watching it all with love and gratitude, and thought about that wish he had made 2 Christmases ago. He had wished not to be alone. The universe, in its mysterious wisdom, had given him so much more love that saw past limitations, a family forged from loss and hope, and a future that proved that sometimes the most beautiful gardens grow in the most unexpected soil. Have you ever found family in unexpected places? Has someone ever truly seen you when you felt invisible? Share your story in the comments below. Subscribe to Heart Stories for more powerful tales of love that transcends boundaries, healing that spans generations, and the courage to choose connection even when the world tells us to stand alone.